In a small, dusty mining town called Iron Ridge, life was as predictable as the sunrise. The people there were simple, their days filled with hard work and little else. Nestled between endless red hills, Iron Ridge wasn't a place where dreams came true. It was a place where you worked to survive. Jacob Rivers was one of those workers. He was an ordinary man with calloused hands, tired eyes, and a quiet heart. But deep inside, hidden beneath years of exhaustion, Jacob carried something extraordinary: courage. Jacob had been working in the mines for 15 long years. Every morning, he woke up before the sun peeked over the horizon, kissed his sleeping wife softly on the forehead, and headed out to the mine. His boots were old but sturdy, his helmet scratched and worn from countless shifts underground. He didn't complain about his life. He just did what needed to be done. Like everyone else in Iron Ridge, Jacob dreamed of a better future, a bigger house, more time with his family, maybe even enough money to send his kids to college someday. But dreams felt far away in a place like this. On the surface, Jacob seemed like any other miner, but there was something special about him. People noticed it even if they couldn't quite put it into words. It wasn't his strength or his skill. It was the way he handled himself when things got tough. When equipment broke down or someone got hurt, Jacob was always the first to step forward. He never hesitated, never backed away. That's why his co-workers respected him, even though he rarely spoke unless necessary. The day everything changed started like any other. Jacob woke up early, ate a quick breakfast, and walked to the mine entrance with his lunchbox tucked under his arm. The air smelled faintly of sulfur and damp earth, a smell that most outsiders found unpleasant but which Jacob barely noticed anymore. At the gate, he greeted his fellow miners with nods and grunts. Among them was Marcus, Jacob's best friend since childhood. They'd grown up together in Iron Ridge, played together as kids, and now worked side by side every day. As they descended into the mine, the world above disappeared, replaced by darkness lit only by the flickering beams of their headlamps. The air grew colder and heavier the deeper they went, pressing against their chests like an invisible weight. Jacob adjusted his grip on his pickaxe and focused on the task ahead. Today, they were clearing out a newly discovered tunnel that stretched farther than anyone expected. No one knew what lay at the end of it. Coal, perhaps, or maybe nothing at all. Either way, it was their job to find out. For a while, the work proceeded normally. Jacob swung his pickaxe rhythmically, breaking through layers of rock while Marcus shoveled debris into carts. Occasionally, they exchanged jokes to pass the time. "Maybe we'll strike gold today," Marcus teased, wiping sweat from his brow. "Or diamonds. Imagine that. Retiring rich and buying a mansion." Jacob chuckled but didn't respond. His mind wandered briefly to his own modest home, the cracked walls, the leaky roof, and how much effort it would take to fix them. Then he shook his head, refocusing on the task at hand. Daydreams could wait. But then, something strange happened. A low rumble echoed through the tunnel, so deep it vibrated in their bones. Jacob stopped mid-swing, his pickaxe hovering in the air. The sound wasn't natural. It wasn't like the usual creaks and groans of shifting rock. This was different. Intentional. Almost mechanical. "What was that?" Marcus asked, his voice sharp with alarm. Jacob frowned, listening closely. "Could be a collapse," he said slowly, though doubt lingered in his tone. Collapses weren't uncommon in these parts, but this felt wrong. Too precise. Too controlled. Before anyone could react, the wall beside them began to crack. Thin fissures spiderwebbed across its surface, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. The miners froze, staring wide-eyed as chunks of stone tumbled to the ground. Then, with a deafening roar, the wall shattered completely, revealing a gaping hole behind it. A rush of cool air swept through the tunnel, carrying with it an odd metallic scent, mixed with something indescribable, something alien. Everyone instinctively took a step back, their faces pale with shock. Some men dropped their tools and bolted toward the exit, shouting warnings to others. Chaos erupted instantly, but not Jacob. While everyone else scrambled to escape, he stood rooted to the spot, staring into the breach. Beyond the jagged edges of the broken wall lay a chamber unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its walls shimmered with pulsating symbols that glowed faintly, casting strange patterns of light onto the floor. In the center of the room stood a massive structure, towering, intricate, and humming softly as if alive. It looked ancient yet impossibly advanced, its design defying human logic. "Stay back!" Jacob yelled, raising his hand to stop the remaining miners from approaching. His voice cut through the panic like a knife, commanding attention despite the chaos around them. Gradually, the others obeyed, retreating several steps away. Marcus grabbed Jacob's arm, his grip tight with fear. "Are you crazy? We need to. Get out of here." Jacob didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the chamber, his mind racing. Something about this discovery felt monumental, important, dangerous, yes, but also full of potential. "We can't leave," he finally said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Not yet. Think about it, Marcus. What if this is something big? Something meant to be found?" Marcus stared at him incredulously. "Big? Jacob, this isn't big. This is insane. We don't know what that thing is, or what it does." "I know," Jacob admitted quietly. "But I have to see." Against every instinct screaming at him to run, Jacob stepped closer to the breach. Each movement felt deliberate, as though guided by some unseen force. Marcus hesitated, torn between loyalty to his friend and the overwhelming urge to flee. Finally, with a muttered curse, he followed, keeping pace a few steps behind. Together they entered the chamber cautiously, their footsteps echoing softly against the smooth metallic floor. The air inside was cooler, almost refreshing compared to the stifling heat of the tunnel. Jacob's headlamp reflected off the glowing symbols, making them dance like fireflies. Despite the strangeness of it all, he felt no immediate danger. Instead, a sense of awe washed over him, mingled with curiosity. At the center of the room stood the towering structure, its surface etched with intricate designs that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Between them and the object lay a pedestal, atop which rested a crystalline orb. It shimmered with colors that flowed like liquid, mesmerizing and hypnotic. Jacob approached it slowly, his breath catching in his throat. "Don't touch it," Marcus warned sharply, his voice trembling. "You don't know what it'll do." Jacob paused, considering the advice, but deep down he knew he couldn't turn back now. Whatever this was, it had chosen him to find it. And so, ignoring Marcus's protests, he reached out and touched the orb. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, a surge of energy coursed through Jacob's body. It wasn't painful exactly, but it was overwhelming, like being struck by lightning without the burn. Images flooded his mind faster than he could process them. Stars collapsing, planets forming, civilizations rising and falling. Voices whispered in his head, soft and melodic, speaking directly into his thoughts. They weren't hostile. They were curious, probing, seeking understanding. Jacob stumbled backward, clutching his head as the visions intensified. Marcus caught him, steadying him as he fought to stay upright. "What's happening?" Marcus demanded, his voice frantic. I don't know," Jacob stammered, struggling to form coherent words. "They're talking to me." "Who's talking to you?" "The ones who made this." Jacob gestured weakly at the chamber around them. "They're explorers, travelers. They've come from somewhere far away." Marcus stared at him, disbelief warring with fear. "You're saying aliens built this thing?" Jacob nodded, still reeling from the flood of information. "Yes, and they're trying to tell us something." As the initial shock wore off, Jacob realized the enormity of what he'd encountered. This wasn't just a random discovery, it was a message, a warning, an opportunity. Whatever it was meant for him. And somehow, he knew his life, and the lives of countless others, would never be the same again. Jacob stood frozen, his mind reeling from the torrent of images and voices that had flooded his consciousness. The crystalline orb still shimmered faintly in his hand, its glow pulsating like a heartbeat. Marcus, gripping Jacob's shoulder to keep him steady, looked both terrified and confused. The chamber around them hummed softly, the glowing symbols on the walls shifting and rearranging themselves as if alive. It was as though the entire room was responding to Jacob's presence. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking. "What did you see?" Jacob took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to focus. I don't know how to explain it," he began, his voice low and hesitant. "It's like they're showing me things, places far away, worlds we've never imagined. They're not here to hurt us. They're travelers." "Travelers?" Marcus repeated, raising an eyebrow skeptically. "You mean aliens?" Jacob nodded slowly. "Yes, but they're not what we think of when we hear that word. They're explorers, scientists, maybe even historians. They've been watching us for a long time." Marcus let out a nervous laugh, running a hand through his hair. "This is insane, Jacob. Aliens watching us? Why would they care about us? We're just miners stuck in the middle of nowhere. They care because—" Jacob hesitated, struggling to put the alien thoughts into human words. "Because we're at a crossroads. Humanity is standing on the edge of something big, something dangerous. If we don't change, we might destroy ourselves." Marcus stared at him, unsure whether to believe what he was hearing. "And these aliens, they sent you a message? Through this glowing ball thing?" "It's more than a message," Jacob said, looking down at the orb in his hand. "It's knowledge, a way to help us, to guide us." The two men fell silent, the weight of Jacob's words hanging heavy in the air. Marcus glanced around the chamber nervously, half expecting something or someone to appear out of the shadows. But the room remained eerily still, save for the soft hum of energy emanating from the towering structure in the center. Back at the surface, chaos had erupted. When the wall collapsed and strange noises echoed through the tunnels, panic spread among the other miners. Some ran for the exit, shouting warnings to anyone who would listen. Others huddled together, too scared to move. News of the mysterious event quickly reached the town above, drawing crowds of curious onlookers to the mine entrance. "What happened down there?" demanded Harold Grayson, the mine supervisor, as he pushed his way through the throng of workers, spilling out of the shaft. His face was red with anger and fear. "Where's Jacob and Marcus?" No one had answers. All anyone knew was that there had been a loud explosion, followed by flashes of light and an unnatural breeze blowing up from the depths. Speculation ran wild. Some claimed it was a gas leak or a cave-in. Others whispered about secret government, experiments gone wrong. A few even dared to suggest the impossible, that something unearthly had been discovered. Among the crowd stood Sarah Ellison, a young geologist who had recently arrived in Iron Ridge to study unusual mineral deposits in the area. She had heard rumors of strange seismic activity near the mine and decided to investigate. Now standing at the edge of the commotion, she listened intently to the fragmented stories being shared by the frightened miners. "This isn't natural," one man muttered, clutching his helmet. "I've worked in mines my whole life. I've never seen anything like it." Sarah's curiosity piqued. She approached Harold Grayson cautiously, introducing herself. "I'm Dr. Ellison," she said, her tone calm but firm. "I specialize in geological anomalies. Can you tell me more about what happened?" Harold shook his head, clearly overwhelmed. "We don't know yet. 2 of our men, Jacob Rivers and Marcus Cole, are still down there. No one's heard from them since the collapse." Sarah frowned, her mind racing. Whatever had occurred in the mine, it was unlike anything she'd encountered before. Geological phenomena didn't cause explosions of light or send workers running in terror. Something else was at play here, and she intended to find out what. Deep underground, Jacob and Marcus were oblivious to the turmoil above. Their attention was entirely focused on the chamber and the orb in Jacob's hand. As the initial shock began to fade, Jacob felt a growing sense of purpose. He didn't fully understand the alien message, but one thing was clear. He couldn't leave, not yet. We need to figure this out, Jacob said, turning to Marcus. Whatever this is, it's important. Bigger than us. Maybe even bigger than Iron Ridge. Marcus groaned, rubbing his temples. You're talking like some kind of hero, Jacob. But this isn't a movie. This is real life. What if touching that thing made you sick or worse? I feel fine, Jacob insisted, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. His body buzzed faintly, as if charged with electricity, and his thoughts raced faster than usual. But he dismissed these sensations as side effects of whatever connection he'd formed with the orb. Look, I know this sounds crazy, but I can't ignore it. What if this is our chance to make things better? For everyone. Marcus sighed, knowing there was no point arguing. Once Jacob set his mind to something, there was no stopping him. Fine, he said reluctantly. But if we die down here, I'm blaming you. Jacob managed a weak smile. Deal. Together, they began exploring the chamber more thoroughly. The glowing symbols on the walls seemed to respond to their movements, shifting colors and patterns whenever they passed by. At first, Jacob thought it was coincidence, but after several minutes, he realized the symbols were communicating with him, feeding him fragments of information in bursts of imagery and emotion. He pointed to a section of the wall where a series of swirling shapes coalesced into what looked like a map. This is a star chart, he murmured, his eyes widening. They're showing me where they came from. Marcus leaned closer, squinting at the glowing patterns. How do you know that? I just do, Jacob replied, shrugging, helplessly. It's like they're downloading information straight into my brain. As they continued their exploration, Jacob noticed something else. A pedestal near the center of the room, similar to the one holding the orb. On top of it rested a small device, sleek and metallic with buttons and dials that glowed faintly. Unlike the orb, this object felt cold to the touch, almost inert. Jacob hesitated before picking it up, unsure whether it was safe. What is that? Marcus asked, eyeing the device warily. I don't know, Jacob admitted. But I think it's part of the message. Maybe a tool to help us understand. Before he could examine it further, a sudden tremor shook the chamber. Dust rained down from the ceiling and the humming sound grew louder, almost deafening. Both men instinctively ducked, shielding their heads with their arms. Great, Marcus muttered sarcastically. Now the place is falling apart. But Jacob shook his head. No, it's not collapsing, it's changing. Sure enough, as the tremor subsided, the chamber transformed around them. The walls became translucent, revealing a vast expanse of stars beyond. The glowing symbols brightened, forming intricate constellations that stretched across the dome-like ceiling. In the center of the room, the massive structure began to unfold, revealing layers of technology hidden within. Jacob stepped closer, his awe outweighing his fear. This is incredible, he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. It's like a ship or a portal. A portal to where? Marcus asked, his skepticism giving way to fascination. To somewhere else, Jacob replied simply. Somewhere far away. Hours passed as Jacob and Marcus delved deeper into the mysteries of the chamber. With each discovery, Jacob's understanding of the alien message grew clearer. The beings, the Lumina as he called them, weren't invaders or conquerors. They were observers, guardians of sorts, tasked with ensuring the survival of intelligent species across the galaxy. Humanity, however, posed a unique challenge. Its rapid technological advancement came at a cost. Environmental destruction, social division, and the looming threat of self-annihilation. They want to help us, Jacob explained to Marcus, his voice tinged with urgency. But they can't interfere directly. They need intermediaries, people who can bridge the gap between worlds. And you think that's you? Marcus asked, raising an eyebrow. Jacob hesitated, then nodded. Maybe. I don't know why they chose me, but I can't turn away. Not now. Marcus sighed, shaking his head in disbelief. You're really going to do this, aren't you? I have to, Jacob replied firmly. If there's even a chance, This can save us. I owe it to everyone to try. As the conversation ended, Jacob turned his attention back to the device in his hands. He pressed one of the glowing buttons experimentally, and a holographic projection sprang to life above the pedestal. It showed Earth, a fragile blue sphere suspended in the vastness of space. Around it swirled lines of data representing humanity's achievements and failures. Jacob felt a surge of determination. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive, not just surviving, but living. And as Marcus watched his friend, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Jacob was right. Maybe this discovery would change everything. Above ground, the people of Iron Ridge waited anxiously for news. Little did they know, their world was about to be turned upside down. The holographic projection of Earth hovered above the pedestal, glowing softly in the dim chamber. Jacob stared at it intently, his mind racing to process the information flooding into him. The lines of data swirling around the planet told a story, a complex narrative of humanity's rise and fall, its triumphs and failures. He saw cities rising from deserts, bridges spanning oceans, and machines reaching for the stars. But he also saw forests disappearing, rivers drying up, and skies darkening with smoke. "They're showing me everything," Jacob murmured, his voice trembling with awe. "Every choice we've made, good or bad. They're trying to make me understand." Marcus stood beside him, squinting at the hologram. "Understand what? That we're messing things up?" Jacob nodded slowly. "Yes, but it's not just about destruction. It's about balance. We've pushed too hard, taken too much without giving back. If we don't change, we'll collapse under our own weight." Marcus frowned, rubbing the back of his neck. "So, what are you supposed to do about it? Save the world single-handedly?" Jacob didn't answer immediately. Instead, he focused on the device in his hands, pressing another button. The hologram shifted, zooming in on specific regions of the planet. One image showed a sprawling city, choked with pollution. Another depicted a barren wasteland where lush forests once stood. Yet another highlighted areas of conflict, war zones marked by devastation and despair. "These are the places they're most concerned about," Jacob said quietly. "They're not asking us to stop progress. They're asking us to rethink it, to find ways to heal instead of harm." Marcus crossed his arms, skepticism etched across his face. "Even if you figure out how to fix all this, who's going to listen? People won't just drop everything because some guy says aliens told him to save the planet." "I know," Jacob admitted, his tone heavy with frustration. "But maybe I don't have to convince everyone. Maybe I just need to start somewhere. Small steps can lead to big changes." As he spoke, the chamber hummed louder, the symbols on the walls pulsating rhythmically. The lumina were responding to his thoughts, their presence almost tangible despite their invisibility. Jacob felt a strange warmth spreading through his chest, as though they were encouraging him, not forcing but guiding. Meanwhile, above ground, the situation in Iron Ridge was growing tense. Hours had passed since the mysterious event in the Leo mine, and no one had heard from Jacob or Marcus. Rescue teams attempted to descend into the tunnels, but strange electromagnetic interference blocked their equipment. Lights flickered unpredictably, and compasses spun wildly, making navigation nearly impossible. Dr. Sarah Ellison watched the rescue efforts unfold with growing concern. She had joined the team overseeing the operation, lending her expertise in geology and environmental science. Her sharp eyes scanned the landscape, searching for clues that might explain the bizarre phenomena. "This doesn't add up," she muttered to herself, jotting notes on a clipboard. "The seismic readings suggest structural instability, but nothing matches the scale of what people are describing. And the air quality, it's off. There's an unusual concentration of metallic particles." A nearby miner overheard her and approached cautiously. "You think something unnatural caused this?" he asked, lowering his voice. "Some of the guys are saying it's aliens." Sarah hesitated, unsure how to respond. While she dismissed the idea of extraterrestrial involvement as pure speculation, she couldn't deny that the evidence pointed to something extraordinary. "I don't know yet," she replied diplomatically. But whatever it is, it's unlike anything I've seen before. Her curiosity deepened when she noticed faint traces of luminescent dust clinging to the boots of miners returning from the tunnels. The particles shimmered faintly, almost like stardust. Carefully collecting samples, she resolved to analyze them later, hoping they might hold answers. Back in the chamber, Jacob continued to interact with the alien technology. Each new discovery brought both clarity and confusion. The Lumina weren't speaking directly anymore, their voices had faded, but their message remained clear. Humanity needed guidance, and Jacob had been chosen to provide it. What happens next? Marcus asked nervously, watching as Jacob pressed another button on the device. Are you just going to stay down here forever? No, Jacob replied firmly. I need to go back, to share what I've learned. But first I need to understand it fully. These tools? He gestured to the hologram in the orb. They're meant to help me connect with others, to show them what I've seen. As if on cue, the pedestal began to glow brighter, emitting a soft, golden light. Jacob placed the orb back onto its surface, feeling a surge of energy course through him. The chamber seemed to come alive, the symbols on the wall shifting rapidly, forming patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. Something's happening, Marcus whispered, stepping back instinctively. Jacob closed his eyes, allowing the energy to flow through him. Visions flooded his mind again, this time clearer, more detailed. He saw himself standing before crowds of people, holding the orb aloft as its light illuminated their faces. He saw communities coming together, planting trees, cleaning rivers, building sustainable cities. He saw hope blossoming in places where despair had once taken root. When the visions faded, Jacob opened his eyes, his resolve stronger than ever. It's time, he said simply. We need to leave. Marcus blinked in surprise. Leave? Just like that? What about all this? He gestured to the chamber, the glowing symbols, the towering structure. It'll still be here, Jacob assured him. This place isn't meant to be hidden, it's meant to inspire. But we can't do that if we stay trapped underground. With Marcus reluctantly following, Jacob led the way back toward the tunnel entrance. As they walked, the chamber behind them dimmed, the symbols fading into darkness. The humming sound softened until it disappeared entirely, leaving only silence in their wake. Reaching the surface proved more challenging than expected. The electromagnetic interference grew stronger the closer they got to the exit, causing their headlamps to flicker erratically. At one point, they stumbled upon a group of rescue workers who had ventured partway into the mine. The men froze upon seeing Jacob and Marcus emerge from the shadows. You're alive, one of them exclaimed, relief evident in his voice. What happened down there? Jacob exchanged a glance with Marcus, unsure how to explain. It's complicated, he said finally. But we're okay. Let's get out of here. The group hurried back to the surface, emerging into the bright sunlight to find a crowd waiting anxiously outside the mine entrance. When Jacob stepped into view, whispers rippled through the gathered townsfolk. Some cheered, others stared in disbelief, and a few backed away fearfully. Among the crowd stood Sarah Ellison, her sharp gaze fixed on Jacob. She pushed her way forward, her expression unreadable. What's going on? She demanded, her voice firm yet curious. What did you find down there? Jacob hesitated, clutching the orb tightly in his hand. For a moment he considered keeping the truth to himself, knowing it would sound unbelievable. But then he remembered the visions, the images of hope and unity, and realized he couldn't hide what he'd discovered. This, he said, raising the orb so everyone could see it, is proof that we're not alone, that someone or something is watching over us. They've given us a chance to change, to build a better future, but it's up to us to take it. The crowd erupted into chaos, voices overlapping in shock and disbelief. Some accused Jacob of lying while others begged for more details. Sarah, however, remained silent, studying the orb with a mixture of fascination and skepticism. How? Do we know this is real? She asked after a moment, her tone measured. How do we know it's not some kind of trick? Jacob met her gaze steadily. Because I've seen it, felt it. This isn't just a rock, it's a message, a gift. And if we use it wisely, it could change everything. Sarah didn't respond immediately. Instead, she extended her hand, silently, asking to examine the orb. After a brief hesitation, Jacob handed it to her. As soon as her fingers touched its surface, a jolt of energy coursed through her body, startling her. Images flashed before her eyes. Stars, planets, civilizations, rising and falling. She staggered backward, her breath catching in her throat. "It's incredible," she whispered, her skepticism replaced by wonder. "If this is true—" "It is," Jacob interrupted gently. "And it's only the beginning." As the sun set over Iron Ridge, casting long shadows across the red hills, Jacob knew his journey was far from over. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them, not alone, but with the support of those willing to believe. And as Sarah joined him, her scientific mind eager to unravel the mysteries of the orb, Jacob felt a spark of hope ignite within him. Together they would carry the Lumina's message to the world, proving that even in the darkest times, courage and curiosity could light the way forward. The crowd outside the mine entrance slowly dispersed, their murmurs fading into the cool evening air. Some left in disbelief, shaking their heads at Jacob's claims of alien intervention. Others lingered, their curiosity outweighing their skepticism. Among them was Dr. Sarah Ellison, who couldn't tear her eyes away from the crystalline orb now resting securely in Jacob's hands. The brief surge of energy she'd felt upon touching it had been both exhilarating and unnerving, a tangible connection to something far beyond human comprehension. "This changes everything," Sarah said softly, breaking the silence that had settled between her and Jacob. They stood a short distance from the crowd, near the edge of the mine entrance, where the red hills stretched endlessly into the horizon. "If what you're saying is true, and I'm starting to believe it is, then this isn't just about Iron Ridge anymore. It's global." Jacob nodded, his expression serious but resolute. "That's why we can't waste time. Whatever the Lumina want us to do, we need to act quickly. But first we have to figure out how to share this with people without sounding crazy." Sarah smiled faintly, her sharp mind already working through possibilities. "We'll start small. Gather evidence. Analyze the orb and the metallic dust I collected earlier. If we can prove its origins are extraterrestrial, we'll gain credibility. Then we can take it to scientists, governments, anyone who will listen." Marcus, who had been standing quietly nearby, cleared his throat. "And what about me? Do I just go back to mining like nothing happened?" Jacob turned to his best friend, his gaze softening. "You don't have to stay involved if you don't want to, Marcus. What we're doing, it's dangerous. People might not believe us, and even if they do, there's no telling how they'll react." Marcus hesitated, scratching the back of his neck. He wasn't a man built for grand adventures or life-changing missions. His world revolved around simple things: hard work, good company, and the occasional cold beer after a long day. But as he looked at Jacob, the determination in his eyes, the quiet strength radiating from him, he realized he couldn't walk away. Not completely. "I'll help," Marcus said finally, his voice firm despite the uncertainty in his heart. "Not because I understand all this alien stuff, but because you're my friend. And if anyone can pull this off, it's you." Jacob smiled, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Marcus. That means more than you know." Over the next few days, Jacob, Sarah, and Marcus worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle, presented by the orb and the chamber. Sarah set up a makeshift lab in her rented cabin on the outskirts of Iron Ridge, using equipment borrowed from the university where she taught. She examined the metallic particles under a microscope, confirming their composition was unlike anything found naturally on Earth. The results were staggering: elements that didn't exist in the periodic table, bonded in ways defying known chemistry. "This material shouldn't exist," Sarah muttered, jotting down notes furiously. "It's as though it came from another dimension entirely." Meanwhile, Jacob focused on deciphering the symbols etched into the walls of the chamber. With Sarah's help, he began sketching them onto paper, comparing patterns and searching for recurring themes. To their amazement, the symbols seemed to correspond to mathematical equations and astronomical data. Each discovery brought them closer to understanding the Lumina's message, though much of it remained cryptic. "It's like learning an entirely new language," Jacob said one evening, rubbing his temples. "Every symbol holds layers of meaning. Sometimes I think I've cracked it, only to realize I've barely scratched the surface." Sarah leaned over his shoulder, studying the sketches. "Maybe we're approaching this the wrong way. Instead of trying to translate everything, let's focus on the parts that seem most urgent. Like the star charts. They must be pointing us towards something important." Jacob nodded, flipping through his notes until he found a detailed map of constellations. "This section here keeps appearing in my visions. It's always accompanied by feelings of urgency, like it's marking a deadline." Sarah traced the lines with her finger, her brow furrowed in thought. "Could it represent a location, a place we're supposed to go?" "Possibly," Jacob replied. "But if it does, we'll need more than just coordinates. We'll need resources and allies." As word of their discoveries spread cautiously among trusted friends and colleagues, support began to trickle in. Harold Grayson, the mine supervisor, offered to fund part of their research in exchange for exclusive access to any findings related to mineral deposits. While Jacob and Sarah were wary of ulterior motives, they accepted the offer, knowing every bit of help mattered. Other townsfolk contributed food, tools, and moral support, inspired by Jacob's unwavering conviction. However, not everyone shared their enthusiasm. Rumors of alien contact reached the ears of local authorities, sparking investigations and media attention. Reporters descended upon Iron Ridge, eager to uncover the truth behind the mysterious events in the mine. Some painted Jacob as a hero, others dismissed him as delusional. The constant scrutiny weighed heavily on him, but he refused to back down. "We knew this wouldn't be easy," Sarah reminded him during a particularly tense moment. "People fear what they don't understand. But once they see the evidence, they'll have no choice but to believe." Jacob sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I hope you're right. Because if we fail—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Failure wasn't an option, not when humanity's survival depended on their success. One night, as Jacob sat alone in Sarah's lab poring over the orb, something extraordinary happened. Without warning, the object began to glow, pulsating rhythmically like a heartbeat. Startled, Jacob placed it gently on the table, watching as beams of light projected outward, forming intricate patterns on the walls. The symbols he'd been studying appeared again, swirling and shifting until they coalesced into a coherent image. It was a map, not of stars, but of Earth. Specific locations were highlighted, each marked with glowing dots. One dot blinked brighter than the others, drawing Jacob's attention. When he touched it, a flood of information surged into his mind, revealing details about the site. A remote desert plateau surrounded by jagged cliffs and ancient ruins. "They want us to go there," Jacob whispered, his pulse racing. "This is the next step." Sarah entered the room moments later, alerted by the sudden glow. "What's happening?" she asked, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. "I think I know where we need to go next," Jacob replied, excitement mingling with apprehension. "The Lumina are guiding us to somewhere they believe holds answers." Sarah studied the projection carefully, committing the coordinates to memory. "We'll need supplies and transportation. This isn't going to be easy." "No," Jacob agreed, "but we don't have a choice. If we're going to save humanity, we have to follow their lead." Preparations for the journey began immediately. Marcus volunteered to drive, insisting his old truck could handle the rugged terrain better than anything else available. Sarah packed scientific instruments and communication devices, determined to document every aspect of their expedition. Jacob carried the orb, its steady hum providing a comforting presence amidst the chaos. On the morning of their departure, the trio gathered outside Sarah's cabin. The sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light across the red hills. For a moment, none of them spoke. the weight of their mission settling heavily on their shoulders. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked, breaking the silence. Jacob glanced at the orb, then at his companions. "As ready as I'll ever be." Sarah nodded, her resolve stealing. "Let's do this." With that, they climbed into the truck and set off, leaving Iron Ridge behind. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and dangers. But as they drove farther from the familiar comforts of home, Jacob felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Whatever lay at the end of their journey, he knew one thing for certain. Courage wasn't about having all the answers. It was about taking the first step, even when the path was shrouded in darkness. And together, they would face whatever came next. The journey to the desert plateau was long and grueling. The truck rumbled along dusty roads, its engine groaning under the weight of supplies packed tightly into the back. Jacob sat in the passenger seat, clutching the orb tightly in his lap, as if afraid it might slip away. Sarah navigated using a GPS device supplemented by hand-drawn maps based on the coordinates they had deciphered from the alien projections. Marcus drove with steady hands, his eyes scanning the horizon for signs of trouble. For hours, the landscape outside remained desolate and unchanging. Endless stretches of barren sand interrupted only by jagged rock formations and the occasional, scrubby bush struggling to survive. Despite the monotony, tension filled the air. Each mile brought them closer to the unknown, and none of them could shake the feeling that something monumental awaited them. "This place gives me the creeps," Marcus muttered, breaking the silence. "It's like no one's supposed to be here." Jacob glanced out the window, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Maybe that's why they chose it. Somewhere remote, untouched by humans. Sarah nodded, flipping through her notes. If the Lumina wanted to leave clues or tools, they'd pick somewhere safe, somewhere we'd have to work to find. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the desert floor, the trio finally spotted their destination. A vast plateau surrounded by towering cliffs. At its center stood what appeared to be ancient ruins, their crumbling stone structures partially buried beneath centuries of wind-blown sand. The sight sent shivers down Jacob's spine, not because it was intimidating, but because it felt familiar, as though he'd seen it before in his visions. "Looks like we're here," Marcus announced, slowing the truck to a stop near the base of the plateau. The climb to the ruins was arduous, the steep incline testing their strength and resolve. By the time they reached the top, sweat soaked their clothes and their legs burned with exhaustion. But none of them complained. The anticipation of what lay ahead kept them moving forward. When they entered the ruins, an eerie stillness enveloped them. The air was cool and dry, carrying the faint scent of earth and decay. Strange symbols carved into the walls matched those Jacob had sketched earlier, glowing faintly as though responding to the orb in his hands. It was as if the entire site had been waiting for them, dormant until now. "We're in the right place," Jacob said softly, his voice echoing through the empty corridors. "This is it." Sarah pulled out a camera, snapping photos of the symbols and the surrounding architecture. "These carvings are incredible," she murmured, running her fingers lightly over the etchings. "They look thousands of years old, yet they match the designs from the chamber perfectly. How is that possible?" Before anyone could answer, the orb began to glow brighter, its hum growing louder. Jacob held it aloft instinctively, watching as beams of light shot outward, illuminating the ruins in vibrant hues of blue and gold. The symbols on the walls shimmered, rearranging themselves into new patterns that pulsed rhythmically. Then, a low rumble echoed through the structure, shaking the ground beneath their feet. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, gripping a nearby pillar for support. "I think it's activating," Jacob replied, his tone calm despite the chaos around them. "The Lumina must have left something here, something meant to guide us." The rumbling subsided, revealing a hidden chamber at the heart of the ruins. Its entrance was framed by intricate carvings that seemed to depict celestial events, a supernova exploding, planets aligning, stars forming. As Jacob stepped inside, the others followed cautiously, their breaths catching in unison at the sight before them. In the center of the chamber stood another pedestal, this one holding a sleek metallic device unlike anything they'd ever seen. It resembled a console with panels, dials, and screens that glowed faintly. Above it hovered a holographic projection of Earth, surrounded by streams of data flowing like rivers of light. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered, her scientific curiosity overtaking her fear. "This technology, it's beyond anything humanity has achieved." Jacob approached the console carefully, the orb in his hand reacting to its presence. When he placed the orb onto the pedestal, the entire chamber came alive. Lights flared, machinery whirred, and the hologram expanded, filling the room with a three-dimensional representation of the planet. Regions marked in red indicated areas of environmental degradation, conflict zones, and social unrest. Other regions, highlighted in green, showed examples of resilience, innovation, and cooperation. "The Lumina aren't just showing us our problems," Jacob said, his voice filled with awe. "They're showing us solutions, ways to heal the damage we've done to each other and to the planet." Sarah studied the hologram intently, pointing to specific sections. "Look here. These green zones correspond to renewable energy projects, reforestation efforts, and sustainable farming practices. They're giving us a blueprint for survival." Marcus frowned, scratching his head. "So, what do we do with it? Start knocking on doors and telling governments to change their ways?" "In a way, yes," Jacob replied. "But not alone. We'll need help. Scientists, activists, leaders. Anyone willing to listen and act." Over the next several days, the trio worked tirelessly to document everything they found. Sarah recorded detailed observations while Jacob interacted with the console, learning how to operate it and extract information. Marcus handled logistics, ensuring they had enough food and water to sustain themselves during their stay. Their breakthrough came when Jacob discovered a feature within the console that allowed them to broadcast messages globally. Using advanced satellite technology embedded in the system, they could transmit images, data, and even Jacob's personal account of his encounters with the Lumina to every corner of the world. "This is it," Jacob said, his heart pounding, as he prepared to send the first transmission. "Our chance to share their message." Sarah placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've got this. Just speak from the heart." Taking a deep breath, Jacob activated the console. His face appeared on screens worldwide, accompanied by visuals of the glowing orb, the chamber, and the holographic map of Earth. He spoke plainly, explaining everything he'd experienced, from the moment he touched the orb in the mine to the discoveries made in the desert ruins. He emphasized the urgency of the situation, urging humanity to unite and embrace the solutions provided by the Lumina. At first, reactions were mixed. Skeptics dismissed the broadcast as a hoax, while conspiracy theorists speculated about government cover-ups. But as evidence mounted, scientific analyses of the orb, geological reports confirming the existence of the ruins, and eyewitness accounts from Iron Ridge residents, public opinion began to shift. People started listening. Months later, the impact of Jacob's message became undeniable. Governments collaborated on large-scale environmental initiatives, corporations adopted sustainable practices, and grassroots movements sprang up across the globe. The Lumina's guidance served as a catalyst for change, inspiring hope in places where despair had once taken root. Jacob returned to Iron Ridge, humbled by the role he'd played in reshaping the future. Though fame followed him wherever he went, he remained grounded, focusing on rebuilding his community and supporting local efforts to implement the Lumina's teachings. Sarah continued her research, dedicating her life to studying the alien technology and unraveling its mysteries. Her work earned international recognition, but she never forgot the courage of the man who had trusted her enough to share his extraordinary journey. As for Marcus, he resumed mining, but with a renewed sense of purpose. He became a vocal advocate for worker safety and environmental responsibility, proving that even the simplest lives could spark profound change. Years passed, and the world transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Humanity learned to live in harmony with the planet, guided by the wisdom of the Lumina. And though the aliens themselves remained unseen, their presence lingered in the hearts of those who dared to believe. Jacob often reflected on his journey, marveling at how a single act of courage had set everything in motion. In the quiet moments when he gazed at the night sky, he felt a connection to something greater, a reminder that even in the darkest times, light could shine brightest. And so, 2 lives were forever changed by one man's bravery in the depths of the earth, proving that courage, curiosity, and compassion could bridge worlds and save humanity from itself.